Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Lessons for Life live stream. I am Eleni Anastas, your host, along with my wonderful co-host, Jim Kunkel. And first and foremost, I just want to thank everyone who joined us last week, who caught the replay, and we got a lot of feedback, which we really appreciate. And please don't ever be afraid to be honest or ask us questions, because last week's first episode on Lessons for Life was all about healing. And every single one of us is on some type of a healing journey. And I will be very honest that the idea for these Lessons for Life live stream series was really initiated by my wonderful co-host, Jim. And we decided to base it on chapters from my book, topics that I think are important and beneficial for everyone. Because regardless of your age or circumstance, I really believe that purposeful reinvention is a vital part of navigating change. And reinvention doesn't have to be some big life overhaul. It could be a small, tiny thing. It could be something as simple as adding a habit, changing your routine. The point is you're doing something that's going to benefit you moving forward. So thank you again for all of you that supported us last week. And I really appreciate those of you that are with us now as we talk about the important topic of vulnerability. But before we really dig in, I have to say hello to my wonderful co-host, Jim. How are you this evening?
I'm doing great, Eleni. And to kind of really echo what you were talking about, really the appreciation of everyone. After the live stream, we had a lot of great feedback to the clips that were released. And some people would ask me, is it okay if we comment or share our experiences on your future broadcast? And definitely. So those of you out there watching, when we go and we talk about vulnerability, please feel free to, share some of your comments, your questions, or if you want to share your experiences, that's part of really vulnerability, is to tell your story and to share your story, because it's a good opportunity for you to heal and also to help others as well. So thank you very much, everyone, for really supporting this new stream.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up such a good point, that it is an opportunity to help and support others, because who doesn't want to be validated? I mean, we all do on some level, whether it's, somebody close to you, a family member, or even a colleague. Because whatever you're dealing with, whether it's personal or professional, when somebody can look you in the eyes and say, I know how you feel. This is where I've been. For me, it's like some of the weight has been lifted off your shoulder. There's nothing wrong with you. There might be work that you need to do to move through it. But I think it's comforting when you know that you can connect with someone because they've traveled a similar road. Do you agree?
Oh, I completely agree. And that being said, what we probably should really kind of talk about first is, vulnerability, what it is and why it really matters. And,
Yes.
clinically, when we look at especially emotional vulnerability, it is willingness to acknowledge your emotions, especially the painful ones and the ones that really shake our confidence, our self-confidence. And sometimes it's really important to acknowledge those painful emotions rather than immediately, the flight to avoid them or trying to get rid of them. The best way is just to really kind of face them head on. And so, when I think of, what it is, that's where I really kind of focus on that definition of, what emotional vulnerability is.
Yes, because it is embracing every single thing that you're feeling, that you're experiencing, that you're going through. Because everyone at some point in time has been victimized or traumatized, hurt in some way, whether it's physically, mentally, or emotionally. Now, that being said, when I know, because I can relate to being the quintessential, just pick yourself up by the bootstraps and forge on. And I will admit, I want to say this up front, that for many years, I equated vulnerability with some level of weakness. I totally admit that. And now I know, of course, that is absolutely not the truth. Because when you have the courage to be vulnerable and face up and own those feelings whatever it is that you're going through, again, personally or professionally, that takes all the courage in the world. So embracing your vulnerability takes guts. So I commend and honor anybody that has the courage to step forward to do that moving forward. And I appreciate what you said, Jim, about acknowledging, like identifying those feelings.
Yeah.
Because that which we resist persists. So it doesn't mean you have to dwell there, but you do have to acknowledge what you mean. If you feel like shit, if you feel horrible, if you feel angry, if you feel scared, it's okay to acknowledge that. It doesn't mean you're going to stay there. But for those of us that have just, well, let's just forge on. I don't feel that. I'm not going to stay there. Then it's going to come back to bite you. So to me, part of being vulnerable, and as you so eloquently said, it is acknowledging all those feelings that you have.
Yeah, it's hard enough to acknowledge, painful emotions in private. And for many, a vast majority, it's nearly impossible to acknowledge them in front of other people. Even people who we're close with, like a spouse, a parent, a friend, is so difficult. But it's such a healing opportunity when you can gain that self-confidence to say this. And you always talk about, don't let this define you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is where you have to really have that breakout moment to really acknowledge it and look to share it with others to help the healing process. Because, you can do some level of self-heal, but in many cases with emotional vulnerability, you're really looking for others to help you, to be a support
Mm-hmm.
network, to really help you really keep check into your progress when it's overcoming any type of trauma. So, Elaine,
Yes.
the next thing I really wanted to kind of focus on too was, the benefits of emotional vulnerability. And the first one that comes to mind for me is it is a anxiety reducing opportunity when you're vulnerable and you're sharing that. Why is it such an important thing when it comes to anxiety to reduce it, in your opinion?
Most of anxiety, well, for many people, comes from the unknown. You are fearing what this could mean, what could happen, how is this going to play out? And you have all these anxious, nervous thoughts. And that can cause you to spiral, emotionally. But when you talk about acknowledging it, then okay, it takes some of that fear away. At least you know what you're dealing with. What's the saying? The devil you know is much better than the devil that you don't know. So it's identifying it, labeling it, and it doesn't mean the pain's not going to be there. It doesn't mean the road ahead is going to be easy by any means. But that helps to reduce anxiety when you can identify why you're feeling what you're feeling. In fact, one of our listeners had posted that pain is isolating. That is so true, especially when you keep it to yourself. Because I believe without question, when you're in that world of pain, and maybe you've been horribly victimized through circumstances beyond your control that you did not deserve, let's be clear, everyone's been victimized. But if you stay in that pain, and you're not willing to seek help, seek support, which means owning those feelings, what vulnerability is about, there is not a chance that you can progress or grow in that headspace. So to me, a big benefit of embracing your vulnerability is taking your power back. I hurt. I need help. That's a powerful move.
Yeah, so true. Another thing too that comes to mind, it really kind of helps strengthen relationships with loved ones or family members or friends. Really kind of gives you an advantage when you do have vulnerability where, again, like you say, you're sharing yourself and you're also reaching out to others as well. So that in itself, you're kind of like opening yourself up. And that gives you that opportunity, I think, to have a stronger relationship with others.
Yes, 100%. And it is embracing that again, because there's nothing to hide. And to me, when something stays secretive, when you're hiding or you're trying to put up this force field of how you really feel, that's when you can get really hurt. But if you're not afraid to say up front, this is what's going on with me, you're actually, again, taking your power back. And I was using it as an example a while ago with a client. You know how kids would say, like, tattletale, like, I'm going to tell on you, about something you did or said, who knows. But as an adult, if you fear someone's going to expose how you feel, whether you've been through it all, whatever kind of trauma, whatever kind of experience that you've been through that makes you feel vulnerable, then you hide in secrecy. And that's no life. You can't grow that way. So if someone says, I'm going to tell on you, tell your secret, well, I'm going to tell on me first. So they don't have any power over me. Yeah. I'm going to own how I feel. That takes my power back. You then have no control over me.
Yeah, I think it also goes into, another aspect of a benefit. You really kind of hit it there, is really improving your self-awareness. You're going to see certain things differently because you've gone through trauma, you've opened yourself up, you've become vulnerable, where you've shared it, and you're in that healing process. But now all of a sudden you can see signs, you can see things that are happening that could get to a point where you could get yourself into new trauma, or maybe revisit the same trauma you've experienced, and it's been debilitating for you. But I like what you had said there, where you see something coming and you basically head it off by taking it and turning it to really benefit you, to stop what could be a trauma that could be down the road, by just acknowledging it and bringing light to it. So that is really a powerful tool.
Because I don't want anybody to fear being, exposed, if you will. Oh, someone's going to know my secrets.
Yeah.
But if you're genuinely in pain, whatever kind of trauma had happened, personally, professionally, and I'm not saying you need to, call the newspaper, get on the media, shout it out loud, but it's still seeking the support that you need to move through it. And for that, you have to speak up. So when you know that you're seeking the right support to help you through that experience, to own your vulnerability, without question, you're taking your power back. And that, to me, reduces the fear of, oh, what if somebody finds out that I feel this way? What if it's okay, because there's nothing wrong. You're entitled to all of your feelings without question. So I want people to feel good about their ability to move forward.
Yeah, when you really think about it, as human creatures, we're communal. We are part of a community. We interact, we communicate, we share, we work together. And for you to hold it inside and not kind of share it at the right time or the right way, or whatever way you want to go about it, you're really kind of working against the human nature. And I think that takes a lot more work, and it's also eventually going to be very damaging to you, because you're just bottling it inside. You're not addressing it. You're not really resolving that. And then other things can happen. And we all know that there's a lot of challenges out there when it comes to, people and self-harm and everything like that. You never want to get to that point. You want to be able to reach out to somebody when you hit rock bottom, or you think you hit rock bottom. Open yourself up, reach out to somebody. I think that is so important to do, because it's part of human nature.
Yes. And don't be afraid to keep reaching. If maybe the first person you reached out to, or the first avenue you tried to get the support that you need, did not work or was not the right fit for you, that's okay. Please trust me when I say that part is normal. Don't let that stop you from continuing to seek the support that's going to benefit you, so you can move from victim to the person that took their life back and grow through what you've been going through.
Yeah. So let's talk about how to be more vulnerable. And the first thing that, I had read about is observing anger. And what it means by that is, watching yourself without even thinking about your trauma. And, for me, I think that is really important, because when you do have anger, anger can manifest in so many negative ways. And you have really brought up in your book and other things that we've talked about is where you channel that negative, the anger, and turn it into something positive. How do you really, without even thinking, what's some advice that you have for people who are watching this right now who might have issues when dealing with trauma and they react with an anger aspect of it? What should they do to really kind of check themselves when it comes to anger? How to turn that?
That's a great question. And it's okay to be angry, first of all, especially if you were done wrong. Somebody intentionally did harm to you, or you were a victim of circumstance that was beyond your control. The one thing I really want to caution against is trying to pretend you're not supposed to be angry. That's not going to get to me. You can't affect me. You can't hurt me. No, acknowledge that anger. Because again, if you keep resisting it, it's going to persist and it's going to bleed into all other areas of your life. And then it has control over you. You don't have control over it. So honestly, the very first thing is like, all right, I'm angry, or this is pissing me off, or I'm frustrated. Acknowledge it. But then if you can, kind of like doing that like helicopter view, to remove yourself from the situation and look down on it with perspective. What exactly am I angry about? What is causing me to feel this way? Because there's got to be a lesson in it. There's got to be something that you can learn that's going to help you. So if you look at it from that kind of a clinical perspective, that's going to help diffuse it. But please first say, yeah, I'm angry, I'm hurt, I'm pissed, however you want to label it, because not acknowledging it does yourself a disservice, because you have the right to feel everything you want to feel. One thing I've never said to anybody, and I was a teacher forever, and I worked with emotionally impaired kids, and I've had clients, all over the map, from CEOs to just starting out entrepreneurs. Never once have I said, oh, you shouldn't feel that way. But people will still do that. So other people may discount your feelings. Please don't discount your own. So acknowledge it, but then do that 10,000 foot view and say, all right, I am angry about this. What exactly caused it? What was the catalyst? Because that, once you understand, that's how you take your control back. And I think you want to bring up Carl's point. He made a great
point. And Carl Davenport says, in the age of toxic masculinity, how do you differentiate your discussion or acknowledgement of vulnerability with the common definition of easily hurt, powerless, at risk, whining, etc.? And thank you again for all this live stream.
Thank you so much. That excellent comment and question. And yes, people can, again, that kind of ties into, well, you shouldn't feel that way, or you're too sensitive, get over it, going along with that easily hurt. But there's a difference between saying, I'm hurt, I'm frustrated, and this is what caused it, than poor, pitiful me. The difference between being victimized and remaining a victim makes all the difference in the world. So when you've been victimized, all of it's going to come up, whether it's anger, hurt, frustration. It's not about being too sensitive, or as Carl said, you're whining. No, that's why I ask you to kind of remove yourself and look back on it. This is exactly why I feel the way I feel. Then you can strategize or problem solve on the steps you're going to take to move through those feelings. But I see so many people beat themselves up. I shouldn't have let that person get to me. I shouldn't be angry about that. I'm better than that. And none of that matters. You feel what you feel. But be able to remove yourself to look at it with a different perspective.
I think, kind of how you were talking at the end of, covering what Carl had brought up, another aspect of, being more emotional, emotionally vulnerable is, in the observing, we're talking about observing still, observing anxiety, notice it within you and then converting it into positive thoughts and actions, where
Mm-hmm.
you were talking about saying, oh, I shouldn't have said it that way, or I should have done it that way. That's fine to be able to be self-critical like that, but take that anxiety from that, what you just said, and turn it into something positive, into thoughts or actions.
Yes.
Anxiety is such a killer. And,
Yes.
you have to find a way to convert anxiety, because it will crush you.
I love that you brought that up, because that's a huge point, because we all experience anxiety at different stages in our life. Some, battle it for years. It's very real. And as you said, it can crush you. It's debilitating. But not embracing your vulnerability, saying that I need help because I feel this way, you are going to stay in the struggle. And if we stay in the struggle, we're embodying that victim mentality. Again, maybe you've been horribly victimized, but at the end of the day, it's always, always your choice of whether you're going to remain a victim. So if you don't embrace your vulnerability, seek the help and support, then you're staying in the victimhood. And nobody's going to live a life. Nobody's going to prosper. Nobody's going to grow and evolve the way they want to. And I appreciate you talking about anxiety and shifting it with actions and thoughts. But please go back to identify it. So, okay, I'm feeling anxious about this. Now, what can I do to replace that thought? Or what do I need to do to move myself through those feelings? Because if you honor yourself by acknowledging that you feel that way, to me, that's self-love.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I used to be, the president, CEO, the whole executive board of, you shouldn't feel that way. The shoulding on yourself. Not true. But acknowledge it. And then you can say, okay, now how am I going to move through this? And that's where you seek the support and guidance. There's all sorts of strategies out there, therapies and whatever it is, but you have to find what works for you.
And then another observation, self-observation, is related to sadness. Describing, what it feels instead of judging yourself. A lot of people in the moment of sadness are really blaming themselves for the trauma. And you really have to find a way, just as much as you're converting anxiety, you really have to find a way to address sadness, convert it, but also Teflon yourself so that you don't become subject to additional sadness and new sadness. And it can be very difficult because we are emotional creatures too. But sadness is also a good way for you to kind of, when you're observing sadness, to be able to say, this is a red flag for me and I need to adjust myself accordingly. And, in looking at, as much as we talk about sadness, anxiety, how difficult is it to combat, or what are ways, let's say, to combat against sadness really kind of crushing you also?
First and foremost, I'm going to go back to gratitude. I don't know if you can see the little plaque that I have on the bottom of my bookshelf there. And it almost sounds cliche, but it is so true. If something is not working, if something is causing you to feel the sad, heavy emotions, without question, we have to focus on what we do have and what is working. And the first thing I say when I wake up every day in the morning, literally, is thank you, God, for another day. And if I'm feeling any kind of sadness, I go on, I rattle off a lot of things. Like I'll walk around my little condo saying it's just gratitude. Thank you for my eyes. Thank you for my strong body. Thank you for my home. Thank you for the shelter. Thank you for the electricity. Because we need to get in that, and energy flows where our attention goes. And it's not that you shouldn't feel sad. Again, sometimes you just have to go there. That whether it's that day or how long it is, but how long you stay there is what's going to make the difference. And when it starts to truly negatively impact your life, always got to go back to gratitude. And I'm thinking of a quote from Michael J. Fox, who I'm just a huge fan of. He's been battling aggressive Parkinson's for over 3 decades. And he literally said, gratitude makes optimism sustainable. Can't say it better than that. Gratitude makes optimism sustainable, especially when you're in the thick of it. Whatever you're dealing with, whatever kind of trauma or event that has caused you to feel all those feelings, and you know you're in a vulnerable state, because it's scary. It's scary to be vulnerable. How am I going to get through this? We all need to have something to look forward to. We all need to have something that helps us feel future focused. And if nothing else, start with gratitude. You're still here. That to me, and that's what helps me, because when I start to get in that world of hurt, stay in that sad space, I have to go to, well, what is working? And a former student recently reminded me, if a student would come up to me and say, I don't know how to do that, I can't do this. He reminded me that I never said, it doesn't matter, go figure it out. I would always say, show me what you can do. Show me what you can do. So when they would get sad and frustrated and angry that they couldn't accomplish a task, I'd shift right to, show me what you can do.
Yeah.
Focus on the positive, and that gave them the strength to go back and figure out the other one.
So when I had done some research on the clinical side of this topic, especially two elements of validation. The first one was frustration. I think you kind of hit on that as you were just talking about, validating that frustration. It's okay to have that feeling, and you have to, just like you would anxiety or anything like that, frustration also has to be converted into something positive. And I think you really nailed it where you were just talking about, now show me, and then there you're able to formulate your judgments if it's working properly and what adjustments might be. The other validation too was related to happiness and sadness. And you got two ends, of a spectrum, happiness and sadness. How do you validate both happiness and sadness, Eleni?
Oh, that's a great question, because they're both very powerful emotions. So again, never have I ever, nor will I, you shouldn't feel that way. It doesn't matter what they're feeling. It's your feelings. You have that right. So acknowledging them, reinforcing that they have that right, is a validating process, whether it's happy or sad. But then to me, it's always questioning. Because if you're genuinely curious and questioning, it's not judging. But when you're shooting on someone, you shouldn't feel that way, or it shouldn't matter to you, or why are you letting that bother you? That's very judgy. But if you can ask questions that are, tell me what exactly makes you feel this way, seek to understand, that's validating. And that makes them feel accepted and not judged. So ask those questions to make the connection, because then you're also helping that person. Maybe they thought they were angry about something, but then through your questioning and you listening to them, they're going to realize, okay, this is what actually caused me to feel this way. And it might help them go in a different direction. But being supportive by asking the right questions without the judgment.
Oh, very good. Very good. Eleni, what an amazing second episode of this new series, Lessons for Life. How can people get in contact with you, follow you?
Yes. Well, I'm here on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and you can also just come to me through my website. It's all branded under my own name, elenianastas.com. And any questions, I always, I welcome conversation. I believe in connecting to cultivate relationships. So I appreciate anybody that just wants to reach out and have a conversation, because I know that we're all on a journey. And I think the more that we can support each other. And Jim, I just thought of something else I wanted to share really quick.
Sure.
Why vulnerability is so important to me, because I think of, in fact, it was just recently. Yes, Carl, thank you. Yes, no judgment. Just ask, and it's okay to ask questions. Curiosity to me is fine when it's respectful and genuine, because then it's not judgy. But I was listening to this woman say, oh, I don't want to get involved because I'm afraid to get hurt again. I'm afraid this, I don't want to be hurt. Who hasn't had those feelings before? And you could say that about any area of your life. Well, I'm afraid to start this business because what if I fail? Or I'm afraid to move forward. Fearing those outcomes, first of all, that we can't guarantee, then you never get to the good stuff. Like, I'm afraid to show my true feelings, so you never get close to that individual. Well, then you're never going to know how wonderful it could have been. I mean, obviously it may not work out, but it still could have been. You're too afraid to start that business. You're never going to know how successful you could have been. So I like ask people, if you can own your vulnerability, you can own your life. What would you go after? What would you do if you weren't afraid of getting hurt, or if you weren't afraid of failure? Because those are just stages. Those are just stepping stones. Being hurt, failure, is not the end of the road unless you allow it to be.
Oh, wonderful. What a great way to end this broadcast. And you can follow me on LinkedIn and also on Twitter. I'm at James Kunkel. I guess Twitter's now been rebranded to X. So whatever Elon's changing it to, you can tweet me or X me there, however it's going to be moving forward. And also, too, just one more shout out. Make sure that you do get an opportunity. Check out the reviews on My Reinvented Life. This is still available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. A bestseller and a very good book, and one I highly recommend. So help support Eleni in this broadcast also by supporting her publication. And Eleni, I think that's it. We'll be back again next Monday, and looking forward to working with you to build that next broadcast.
Yes, thank you so much, Jim. And thank you to everyone that joined us this evening, and to those of you that'll be listening to the replay. Again, please feel free to reach out with any comments or questions to Jim or myself, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
All right. Goodbye, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.